Hi guys, Keith Arkenberg Farms. It is the last week of January 2021, and amazingly enough, it's fairly decent out here. Windy as heck coming out of the south, probably about 45 degrees. But today we're coming inside because we need to work on our crop plan. So what we've done so far, 2 weeks ago, we put together our seed order, kind of figured out what we're going to order for this year, how many beds we're going to plant. Now we have to have a plan of action and know when transplants need to be started and where they need to be put. But first, check out the building. I'm getting close on it. I got it completely insulated and wrapped. I'm going to stain the beams here before long. Got a FRP wall, wash sinks, just need to finish plumbing those up. New walk-in, plenty of room for storage. And the facility's on the end. So let's get to working on making our crop plan. Okay, so today will not involve any math. Well, maybe a little, but not like as intensive as figuring out how much seed you need to order. But we need to know what we're going to grow, when to plant it, and what will come next. So we need to know the DTM, which is days of maturity. We also want to know when to harvest. Our first week of market is the second week of April, so that is my target date. I actually shoot for the week afterwards because it makes it a little bit easier on me and our temperatures we usually have, even though I'm planting inside of tunnels. That way I just don't feel burdened to have to push this, but I can just pull a slight harvest off of here just to kind of make the first market. So with that, our initial date, we have to go backwards. Now I know for our leaf lettuce, if we want to harvest on the 18th, we need to transplant back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks ahead of time. And that's in a tunnel. That is about average. It's usually about 5 weeks in the field. But that should give us at least a good estimation of starting date. So what we'll do is we'll start with this line. We'll put our H for our harvest, and we go back to our transplant date, and then we mark our crop. So we got transplant, leaf lettuce, harvest. So now we need to know when to seed this. I knew through experience that planting this time of year, the starts take forever to get going. So what I traditionally do is start planting this week. So this will be my first plant date. So we're going to plant our starts here. That gives them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 weeks, roughly, almost 7 weeks, to get up to size before they go out in the field. So a lot of this will involve growing. I've actually pushed most of my stuff underneath lights to get them going. And then after that, we'll have to harden off at some point for about 2 weeks before we transplant so they're not too shocked inside of the tunnels. So our next planting, because as the year progresses and the soil warms up, our days in the field will actually go down, and so will our planting. So I will not plant here. I'll skip a week and we'll plant again. Nope, not there. Right here. So there's 2 weeks to planting. This one will be transplanted out at the same date. I'll allow this one to be in the field a little longer, and we'll harvest the next week. Then for the next crop, we'll skip another 2 weeks again. We'll transplant out 2 weeks after this. And we'll be able to harvest about the week afterwards. And I'll continue this pattern down. We'll skip 2 weeks every time until we hit in about April. Because all these plantings, as the soil warms up, the transplants will come out sooner, as you can see. And then the harvest times will also come up quicker, which will pretty much stabilize after the soil warms up to where the harvest will come out. And this stuff will really start to stack up at this point. That's why I try to space them out earlier in the beginning of the season so we don't have too much backed up and we don't actually end up losing beds that we need. But after this point, let me put some more dates on here real quick. So now I know I'll harvest here. I usually try to get a second cut. So we will not do anything here, and we'll do our second cut, which will be harvest 2, and we'll also crop out the bed at this time. We'll do 2 weeks of stale seed bed, and we'll plant our next crop. Next crop will be radishes. So we plant, these are radishes, and I know they're 4 weeks, so we got plant 1, 2, 3, 4. Harvest. This bed, same thing. We got H2, 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 H2. So now once we're in main season, everything is super easy because everything remains the same. As you can see, all these will be still bedded. We'll plant, 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 plant our radishes in each of those. And then we will harvest this each week. Out here in June, there'll be no problems whatsoever. June and July with this. They start to get a little spicy during this time period, but other than that, there's no problem. So that would take up a full 5 beds. Now, for radishes early in the season, I know from experience in my region that I have to plant on the 28th. So February 28th we plant. And this again, we skip 2 weeks until right about this April time period. So we're going to skip 2 weeks, skip 2 weeks, going to skip 2 weeks, and right about here we'll switch back to planting every week. Now, once we get to this time period, I know we're at our 4 weeks plant to harvest. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 harvest. So there's our radishes. But what we have here, this will give us a continuous supply each week as we go back. Because like I said earlier, the days to maturity are going to change. These earliest radishes, they're going to be planted clear back at the end of February, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks to harvest. That's almost double what it says on the manufacturers in the seed bags. Usually it's about 28 days to harvest. But as we progress closer and closer to when the soil warms up more, they get pushed a lot quicker. But what I know from here, just looking at this rotation, is that if I do this full entire plot, because it's 5 beds, in radishes, will be harvested out until May. This bed doesn't get planted until then. So what I need is another 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks of radishes in here. So if we just come over to, I don't know, we can just go over to 4-1, 4-2, 4-3, 4-4, and 4-5, because most of my blocks are built in 5 bed patterns. We will continue to plant our radishes. Plant until we get to this planting date right here. So plant and plant. And then now we plant up here in our second bed. I can save a little bit of bed space if I don't do stale seed bedding, but I found it's a lot better on the whole entire system, and it also gives you a little wiggle room in the whole plan. So we got our radishes again. And basically, after we reach this point in the season, which is our early April, I know for my region, I'm planting radishes every week no matter what. I just have to have somewhere for them to go. The biggest trick is somewhere in here, they like to stack on top of each other, and I'll have, say, this bed and this bed will be both done at the same time. It does not go in an orderly fashion like this. And some weeks I might not have many radishes. I might have to do a thin picking because it got cold and this one got extended out here and pushed the whole chain out. But I know at least with this that I'm planting radishes and I'm coming back up here and planting radishes every week. And then this will go on to somewhere else as well. Same tactic back on the leaf lettuce. We'll just call this LL. So planting and I'm transplanting. So next time I need to transplant will be something in here. But as you can see, I want to let this bed stale seed bedded at least 2 weeks. So we'll fill all of these up that we cannot use. That way we know that we at least have a little bit of wiggle room in there. So my leaf lettuce is about the same. Transplanting kind of goes in jumps and staggers, but after we hit this point in the season, which I know from experience in our region, we transplant every single week. So what that tells me, I need to transplant here. I need to come down and find a bed. There's a bed in 4. And then we'll plant it the week after. So I need to continue to do this until I can get back into this bed, which will be transplanting of my Solanova leaf lettuce in there. So got 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, my harvest 2, and we'll stale bed it out. So we need to get 1 more week here, so we'll just come down here into 5. We'll plant, transplant, and then we have our harvest. So our harvest, our harvest, our harvest 2, our harvest 2. So after you get into the part of the season where everything gets standardized, you can literally just make a block like this on your computer. I find spreadsheets work best, either Google Docs or Excel, whichever one you want to make it in, and then you can just literally copy this and paste it and move it to wherever you need it in the season. So we just continue going on and on and on, so we just keep filling these in. So, you know, we're not able to show here. This is a transplant after this, so actually this crop was planted here to go to here. And same thing with this one, it'll be transplanted. You'll be planting here to go to here. But since we're using plug flats and transplants, we actually gain 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks of bed space by doing it this way. And with this, we'll just continue this pattern throughout the season. With main season crops, a lot more difficult to think about. You can do some things like, instead of jumping over to radishes here, we could jump over to a main season. May, first week of May, just about perfect for starting to plant outside tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that. It won't tie your bed space up too much, but a lot of times I cannot get a crop in before that. Now, for these quick turn vegetables, we can get 1, 2, 3, and usually 4 crops per year. So right now I'm going to click it over to a picture of a crop plan I've used in previous years that has worked decent for me. Again, we always get stacking up right around this April-May region, because these times are not exact. And with stale seed bedding, that'll actually give us a little bit more leeway, unless it gets really hot really quick and we get stuff start to bolt. But this is the main game plan. And here is a picture of what the plan looks like. So as you can see, it gets rather complicated rather quickly. In the real world, it doesn't always work out usually. You at least get close, but at least it gives you a foundation of where you're going and where you're trying to get to. Now you'll have to adjust and pivot, but just slide everything down. Don't try to completely remake your plan. Like I said, it's just a plan. It's not an absolute of things you have to do. But right now I'm going to go inside and get you in front of the computer and show you more of just more broad detail of the way we do it and the way I've had it planned in past years. So here's where I was talking about putting it into a spreadsheet. We're looking for a bed plan. Here is a plan that I've used in the past that's worked on my farm. It might work on yours, but in this I do not have the burn 2 weeks in between, because we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 crops per bed. The most I've ever gotten is 5, and that's because these times do not work. But as you can see, I pretty much know that I have when to plant, when to transplant, and then when my harvest comes in. After we get to this point in the season, this is a single block. I can just copy this thing and then I can paste it anywhere inside this spreadsheet and produce this. So I just did this in a linear fashion. This is never the way it works out. I usually end up trying to nail down a bed at a time with actual crop. So this would be planted, and this next one would be lettuce again, and then I try to plant my spring mix right next to it, and then I try to plant this other lettuce right next to it, and then I plant the radish right here. That way I'm only turning on the one sprinkler system at a time. The only thing that doing something like this makes it a little easier, all of your lettuce is right here. All of your radishes are right here. So this bed will have nothing but radishes cycle through it. This bed will have nothing but head lettuce cycle through it. From here, you can also do something like this, where you know what your dates are, you know when to harvest is going to be. So I have even earlier dates in here where I've got much longer days to maturity in here. But again, we're shooting at about this time period. So that means around March is when we need to plant. Now, the one we just filled out, we had earlier planting than that. We had our first radishes were planted the last week of February. This is actually 2 weeks afterwards. So what I've actually found is that this planting actually comes out in this time, and I have not adjusted this spreadsheet yet. And there's also notes in here, you know, under row cover, outside, what have you. But it gives us pretty much our gist all the way through, and I mean pretty much through the season. 28 days, plant to harvest. The only other drawback with this is that pretty much I used another algorithm to actually calculate these days of maturity based off of some other planting kind of interpolated values. I know to this day, if I plant on October 3rd, I'm not getting these radishes. They will not make it. They get so slow and so weird this time of year, it's just not even worth it with a regular radish. Storage radishes might be a little different. But, I mean, basically the main gist of it is you get these sheets, you print them out. When you go plant, you fill this in. And then I even have other places in here where I can come in and enter my records. So I know I planted in this bed, this section, which is typically just all. When I started my starts indoors, the number it is, which that's my first planting. These are in 200. Well, these are cucumbers there. And then what I plant, how it's planted, and then I just fill in the first harvest date, the quantity. So we'll just do, just to show you, because I got it open, say I don't know, we got 50 cucumbers. So it's 31 days to harvest from transplant to get our cucumbers. I can put notes in there if I want to. So then next week we harvest more cucumbers, which these dates are not correct because there's no way I get cucumbers in April. We harvest another 10 cucumbers. Notes, dead, because they died. And I come over here to the crop out section, put an X in it, and then it fills in my numbers. So we cropped out here. We got days in the field, which it looks like my number formatting is not correct. We'll move that back to a number. 2021, 2021. Yeah, that's still not cooperating. I'll have to fix that. But that gives us our gist there. And then it brings it over to over here. Which it should start to plant it out. And this also tells me profit per foot of bed, profit per foot of week in bed. And then we got something funky going with the days in the field. I originally built this in Excel, so I'm going to have to go through and debug it a little bit so it's looking like to me. Because these numbers are not quite adding up. But anyways, it's something good to have. You want to keep these records because the more records you have, the better you can build your bed plan and know where you're going to plant stuff. I mean, it's one thing to know that you want to plant 3 beds of lettuce a week, but it's another to know I'm going to plant it here, 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 and here. And next week I'm going to plant it here, 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 and here. And that way you have no stress in trying to figure out if you got a crop taking too long, you know you've got to get rid of it. It just gives you a lot more options and a lot better ways of looking at things. Well, as you can see, crop planting takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of time, but it's well worth it in the end. That way you can be like this and still have lettuce in the ground at the end of February or January. So, hope y'all liked what you saw today. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank y'all. Have a good day.